Blood dripped from my mouth onto the cold linoleum floor of the gynecologist's waiting room. My stepbrother Caleb stood over me, his fist still clenched, his voice echoing off the walls as other patients scrambled away in horror. "Choose how you pay or get out," he screamed, waving legal papers in my face. "Sign these now or I'll make sure you never set foot in Arthur's house again." The stitches from my emergency surgery just 3 days ago felt like they were tearing apart as I tried to push myself up from the floor. The nurse was already calling 911, her hands shaking as badly as mine. But Caleb didn't care. He never did. "I'm Elena Sterling, and I'm 34 years old. 2 weeks ago, I had a future. A baby on the way, a father who loved me, and a place I called home. Now, I was bleeding on a medical office floor while my stepbrother tried to steal everything my father left me. It started 3 days after Arthur's funeral. I just lost the baby. A miscarriage at 14 weeks that turned into an emergency D&C when the bleeding wouldn't stop. The doctors said I was lucky to survive. Funny how people throw that word around. Lucky. I was staying at Arthur's house trying to heal both physically and emotionally when Caleb and my stepmother Miranda showed up with a moving truck. They didn't knock. Caleb just used his key and walked in like he owned the place. Miranda trailing behind him with that fake sympathy plastered across her face. "Oh, Elena, sweetheart," she cooed. "We heard about the baby. Such a tragedy." But her eyes were already cataloging Arthur's antiques, probably calculating their resale value. Caleb got straight to business. He slapped a stack of papers on the kitchen counter, the same counter where Arthur used to make his famous Sunday pancakes. "Sign these. Arthur left everything to Mom and me. You get $15,000 if you sign today. Tomorrow it drops to 7. I almost laughed. My father, who raised me alone after my mother died when I was 7, who built Sterling Architects from nothing into a 12 million company, would never leave me out of his will. "That's ridiculous," I told him. "I want to see Arthur's real will." That's when things got ugly. Caleb's face turned that particular shade of purple I remembered from childhood, the color that meant someone was about to get hurt. "This is the real will," he snarled. "Arthur signed it 2 weeks before he died. You were too busy with your pregnancy drama to notice he'd written you off." Pregnancy drama. That's what he called losing my first child at 34 after 3 years of trying. I tried to stay calm, told him I needed time to think, to talk to a lawyer. Caleb gave me 24 hours. But when I showed up for my follow-up appointment at the gynecologist, he was there in the waiting room. How he knew about my appointment, I didn't know yet. Though I'd learned later that Miranda had been going through my phone while I slept. "Time's up," he announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sign now or get out of the house today." I said no. That's when he slapped me so hard I hit the floor, tasting copper as blood filled my mouth. My ribs, still tender from the surgery, screamed in protest. He sneered down at me. "You think you're too good for $15,000. Fine, now you get nothing." The police arrived within minutes, lights flashing, other patients giving statements. Caleb tried his usual charm on them. He was just upset about his father's death. His stepsister was being unreasonable. Families sometimes disagree, but it's hard to explain away a woman bleeding on the floor with clear handprint across her face. They arrested him, but Miranda bailed him out within 2 hours. By the time I got back to Arthur's house that evening with my friend Betty driving me, because I was too shaky to drive myself, the locks had been changed. My belongings were scattered across the front lawn. Clothes, books, photo albums, everything. The neighbor's sprinklers had already soaked half of it. But what broke me was seeing my mother's jewelry box, the one Arthur gave her on their 10th anniversary, smashed open on the driveway, her pearls scattered like tears across the concrete. Betty helped me gather what we could salvage from the lawn. She's 68, retired forensic accountant, sharp as a surgical scalpel, and she'd been Arthur's friend for 20 years. "This isn't right, honey," she kept muttering as we picked up soggy photo albums. "Your daddy would never do this to you." She was right. Of course, Arthur had talked about his will plenty of times, especially after his first heart attack last year. He'd always said the same thing. "Everything splits equal between you and the company employees' pension fund. Elena, Caleb, and Miranda get the house in Arizona and $150,000 each. Fair's fair." But Caleb had other plans. As we loaded my ruined belongings into Betty's ancient Buick Mrs. Higgins from next door finally worked up the courage to approach us. She kept glancing at the house nervously like Caleb might jump out any second. "Elena dear," she whispered. "I didn't want to say anything at the funeral, but your father was very upset the week before he passed. He came to borrow my phone once. Said he didn't trust his own anymore. Said someone was listening." That night, sleeping on Betty's couch with an ice pack on my face, I couldn't stop thinking about Arthur's final weeks. He'd been acting strange, secretive, paranoid even. I'd attributed it to his heart medication. But what if it was something else? At 3 in the morning, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. Someone was trying to get into Betty's house. We called 911 and huddled in her bedroom with her late husband's baseball bat. But by the time police arrived, whoever it was had gone. They'd left a message spray painted on Betty's garage door. "Stop digging, or next time we come in." Caleb showed up the next morning, all fake concern and barely concealed threats. "Heard you had some trouble last night," he said, leaning against Betty's doorframe like he owned that too. "Neighborhood's getting dangerous. Maybe you should think about moving somewhere safer like another state." Betty wasn't having it. "Caleb Vance." She used his full name like a weapon. "I've known you since you were 17 and stealing from your mother's purse. You don't scare me. Now get off my property before I show you what this old lady keeps in her purse." She patted her handbag meaningfully, and Caleb actually took a step back. After he left, Betty pulled out her laptop. "Honey, I did the books for your daddy's company for 15 years before I retired. Still have my access codes. Your daddy never was good about changing passwords. Let's see what Caleb's been up to." What we found made my blood run cold. For the past 5 years, Caleb had been bleeding the company dry. False invoices, shell companies, ghost employees. He'd stolen almost $600,000 just in the last year alone. The patterns were clever, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for. But Betty knew. "This is federal crime territory," she said, adjusting her reading glasses. "Wire fraud, tax evasion, the works. But honey, there's something else." She pulled up another screen. "These withdrawals started getting bigger about 6 months ago, right when your daddy's heart problems got worse." I remembered Arthur's medication had been changed 3 times in 6 months. Each time he seemed to get worse instead of better. The doctor couldn't understand it. Said Arthur wasn't responding typically to treatment. Betty had a theory, and it chilled me to the bone. What if someone was tampering with his medication? She'd seen it before in her forensic accounting days. Family members hurrying along an inheritance by playing with prescriptions. That's when I remembered Arthur's last coherent words to me in the hospital. "Check the basement safe, Elena, behind the water heater. Your mother's birthday." He'd seemed so urgent. But then the morphine kicked in, and he never woke up again. We needed to get into that house. Caleb and Miranda had changed the locks, but they didn't know about the basement window Arthur had never fixed properly, the one I used to sneak in through in high school. At 2 in the morning, dressed in black like cat burglars, Betty and I crept across the backyard. "I can't believe I'm breaking and entering at my age," Betty whispered, holding the flashlight while I jimmied the window. "Though technically, honey, this is still your house until probate goes through." The basement smelled like Arthur. Old Spice and wood shavings from his workshop. Behind the water heater, hidden by a false panel I'd never noticed before, was a safe. Mom's birthday opened it on the first try. Inside were 3 things that changed everything. Arthur's real will, properly notarized and dated just 1 month ago, a thick folder of evidence documenting Caleb's embezzlement, and a letter in Arthur's shaky handwriting. "My dear Elena," it read. "If you're reading this, then my suspicions were correct. I've been feeling worse since Caleb started giving me my medications, insisted on helping after my last heart attack. I've been documenting everything. The company forensic audit is in this folder. Caleb doesn't know I hired an outside firm. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. He monitors my calls. Trust Betty. Trust Henry. Don't let them win." Oh, my love, Arthur. My hands shook as I read. Caleb had been poisoning my father slowly, carefully, making it look like natural decline. And Miranda. I grabbed another folder from the safe. This one, older newspaper clippings, yellow with age. "Oh my God," Betty breathed, reading over my shoulder. "Miranda's first husband died of heart problems. Second husband, kidney failure. Third husband stroke. All within 3 years of marriage. All left her everything. My father was husband number 4. We photographed everything. Then Betty noticed something else. Caleb's computer was still logged in upstairs. Quick look, she suggested, and we crept up the stairs. The house felt wrong without Arthur in it, like even the walls knew something terrible had happened here. Caleb's email was a goldmine of stupid criminal behavior. Messages to Miranda. Old man took his pills like clockwork. Double dose in his coffee this morning. Transfer another $50K before the audit. Elena's getting suspicious. We need to move faster, but the worst was from 3 weeks ago. If we can't get Elena to sign, we'll need to handle her like we discussed. Handle me like they handled Arthur. The next morning, we took everything to Henry Arthur's lawyer for 30 years. He had an office above the old hardware store downtown. All wood paneling and law books that probably hadn't been opened since the Clinton administration. Henry was 70, supposedly semi-retired, but his mind was sharp as ever. "I knew it," he exclaimed, slapping his desk so hard his coffee jumped. "Your daddy came to me 6 weeks ago, scared out of his mind. Said Caleb was up to something, but he needed proof. I told him to be careful to document everything." His face fell. I should have done more. Henry still had connections everywhere. Judges, federal prosecutors, IRS investigators, who owed him favors. This is Big Elena. Well, didn't just steal from the company. He stole from the employees' pension fund. That's federal. And if we can prove he was poisoning your father, that's when Detective Morgan walked in. She was everything you'd want in a cop. Mid-40s, tough as nails, with eyes that had seen too much, but still held compassion. "Mr. Henry called me," she said, shaking my hand. "My mother went through something similar. Caregiver was slowly poisoning her for the inheritance. I take these cases personally. Morgan had been investigating Miranda for months. She popped up on our radar after husband number 3. The insurance companies started asking questions, but she's smart. Always moves states, always waits a few years between marriages. Your father was supposed to be her retirement plan." We spent the next week building our case. Betty worked her magic with the financial records, finding trails Caleb thought he'd hidden. Henry prepared legal briefs that would freeze the estate and stop any transfer of assets. Morgan got warrants for phone records, bank statements, and most importantly, Arthur's medication bottles. The pills tested positive for 3 times the prescribed amount of diane. Morgan told us at that dose it would cause exactly the symptoms your father experienced. Slow enough to look natural, fast enough to kill within months. But we needed more. We needed Caleb to confess. That's when I remembered something about my stepbrother. His ego was bigger than his brain. He always had to brag, had to be the smartest guy in the room. If I played broken, if I let him think he'd won, maybe he'd get careless. "I need to call him," I told the team. "Tell him I'm ready to sign." Betty looked worried. "Honey, he's dangerous." "I know, but he's also greedy, and greed makes people stupid." The call was hard. I had to cry. Not difficult given everything that had happened. I had to sound defeated, broken. "Caleb, it's Elena. You win. I can't do this anymore. I'll sign whatever you want. I just want Mom's jewelry box back, please." I could hear his smile through the phone. "Finally, came to your senses, huh? Tell you what, I'm feeling generous. Sign everything over and I'll give you $25,000 final offer." "Okay," I whispered. "When tomorrow?" "Arthur's office at the company. Bring whoever you want to witness it. I want this legal and final." After I hung up, Henry smiled for the first time all week. "He wants witnesses. We'll give him witnesses. Detective Morgan, how fast can you get a warrant for recording devices?" The next morning, I called Caleb again, playing the broken stepsister to perfection. My voice cracked as I spoke. Though the tears were real, they weren't for the reason he thought. "Caleb, I've been thinking. Arthur mentioned something about another account a few weeks before he died. Something about Mom's life insurance that was never claimed. I don't want any trouble, but if there's more money somewhere, maybe we could work out a better deal." I could practically hear the dollar signs in his eyes. Another account. How much, I don't know. He just said something about a safety deposit box at City Trust Bank. Said, Mom set it up before she died. Maybe a $150,000, maybe more. Caleb took the bait like a starving fish. You better not be lying to me, Elena. I'm not. I need enough money to start over, to get away from all this. He believed me because he wanted to. Greed is funny that way. It makes smart people stupid and stupid people dangerous. That afternoon, Caleb showed up at the house with his girlfriend, Chloe. She was 24, blonde, and had that specific kind of giggle that could peel paint. She thought Caleb was rich. He'd been spending Arthur's money on her like it was water. Designer bags, jewelry, trips to Vegas. She hung on his arm and called him Willie Bear, which made even Miranda roll her eyes. Willie Bear says we're going to buy a yacht. Chloe squealed, admiring herself in the hallway mirror. I've already picked out the name. In Chloe's dream, Betty, who was there helping me pack my remaining things, couldn't resist. Oh, honey, you might want to pick something shorter. Boat names charged by the letter. Chloe blinked. They do. Oh, yes. My late husband had a boat. We called it Bob. While Chloe tried to figure out if Betty was joking, Caleb tore the house apart looking for information about this mysterious account. He went through Arthur's office like a hurricane, throwing papers everywhere, even prying up floorboards in his desperation. Where is it? He finally demanded, grabbing my arm hard enough to leave bruises. I told you I don't know exactly. Arthur was on a lot of medication. He just kept talking about City Trust Bank and Mom's birthday. Maybe the safety deposit box is under her name. Caleb's eyes lit up. Of course, accounts under Mom's name wouldn't have shown up in Arthur's estate paperwork. He immediately got on the phone with his banking contacts, trying to trace any accounts under my mother's maiden name. Meanwhile, Detective Morgan was building her case. The recording devices we'd planted were picking up everything. Caleb and Miranda discussing how much dioxin to give Arthur. Their plans to sell the company to a competitor for half its value. Even their contingency plan for dealing with me if I didn't cooperate. We've got enough, Morgan told us that night. But I want them all. There's someone else involved. Someone at the hospital who's been providing the extra medication. If we move too soon, they might get away. Henry had his own surprise. I've been doing some digging into that. Will they claim your father signed the notary who supposedly witnessed it? He died in a car accident 2 weeks ago. Convenient, right? Except I found his secretary. She says he was in Chicago that entire week. Couldn't have notarized anything in Pennsylvania. The pieces were falling into place. The meeting tomorrow at Arthur's office would be our chance to get everything on record. Morgan would have undercover officers there. I'd be wearing a wire. All I had to do was get Caleb talking. You sure you're up for this, honey? Betty asked, squeezing my hand. You've been through so much already. I thought about Arthur dying slowly while his own stepson poisoned him. I thought about my baby, the stress of everything possibly contributing to the miscarriage. And I thought about all the families Miranda had destroyed before ours. I'm ready, I said. They wanted me to choose how I pay. Tomorrow they'll learn the real price of what they've done. The morning of the meeting, I threw up twice from nerves. Betty held my hair back and reminded me that I was my father's daughter. He built that company from nothing. She said, You've got his strength, honey. Caleb just has his stolen money in a bad dye job. She wasn't wrong about the dye job. Caleb had started going gray at 36 and been fighting it with box color ever since. Today, under the fluorescent lights of Arthur's office, it looked particularly orange. The office still smelled like Arthur's cologne. His coffee mug sat on the desk, still half full from his last day. Caleb had already installed himself in Arthur's chair, feet up on the desk like he owned the place. Chloe was taking selfies in front of Arthur's awards wall, duck facing at the camera. Let's get this over with, Caleb said, pushing the papers across the desk. Sign here, here, and here. Then you get your money and you disappear. His notary was there, a greasy-looking guy named Victor who kept sweating despite the air conditioning. I recognized him from the surveillance photos Morgan had shown me. 3-time convicted forger out on parole. Before I sign, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need to understand exactly what I'm signing. Arthur always said to read everything. Caleb rolled his eyes. It's simple. You give up all claims to the estate, the company, everything. In exchange, you get $25,000 and we never have to see each other again. And what about the company employees? I asked. Arthur had profit-sharing agreements with them. Not my problem anymore. Caleb laughed. Companies being sold tomorrow. Fitzgerald Industries offered $4 million. Could have gotten $12 million if we waited, but I want this done. There it was. Admission number 1. The Wire was getting everything. Miranda walked in, then carrying a bottle of champagne. For after she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, she looked at me with fake concern. How are you healing, dear? That miscarriage must have been so traumatic. Stress can cause those things, you know. Maybe if you hadn't fought so hard about the will. I wanted to throw something at her, but instead I asked, how long have you and Caleb been planning this? She laughed, that tinkling sound that probably charmed my father initially. Planning what, dear? We're just following your father's wishes. Really? I pulled out my phone pretending to check something because I found some interesting emails between you two. Something about handling the old man dating back to last year. Caleb's face went purple again. You hacked my email. That's illegal. No. You left your computer logged in when you threw me out. That's just stupid. Chloe looked confused. Willie Bear. What's she talking about? Nothing, baby. Just sign the papers, Elena. I picked up the pen, then paused. One more thing. How did Arthur really die? Heart failure, Miranda said quickly. You know that, right? Heart failure. Nothing to do with the triple dose of Diane you were putting in his coffee every morning. The room went silent. Even Chloe stopped taking selfies. Caleb stood up slowly. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Old man took his pills like clockwork, double dosing his coffee this morning. Those were your words, Caleb. In an email to Miranda dated 3 days before Arthur died. Victor, the fake notary, started edging toward the door, but I kept going. You killed him, Caleb. Slowly, carefully, but you killed him. Just like Miranda killed her 3 previous husbands. Miranda's mask finally slipped. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. The pills tested positive. The real will is with Arthur's actual lawyer. And that notary who supposedly witnessed your fake will. He was in Chicago that week. Caleb lunged across the desk at me, but this time I was ready. I sidestepped and he crashed into the filing cabinet. You little Willie Bear! Chloe shrieked. What's happening? I thought you inherited everything. You said we were rich. We are rich, baby. She's lying. No, Caleb. You're not rich. You're a thief and a murderer. And you're about to be arrested. That's when the door opened. Detective Morgan walked in with 6 federal agents and enough firepower to stop a small army. Caleb Vance, Miranda Henderson. You're under arrest for murder, embezzlement, wire fraud, and about 15 other charges we'll discuss downtown. Caleb tried to run. He shoved past Morgan and made it about 3 FT before a federal agent tackled him into Arthur's prized potted fuss. Dirt went everywhere. Chloe screamed. Victor tried to climb out the window but got stuck halfway. This is entrapment, Caleb shouted, spitting out potting soil. She set me up. No, Morgan said, cuffing him. She just let you tell the truth for once in your life. Miranda was smarter. She didn't run. Instead, she tried to destroy evidence, grabbing her phone to delete messages. But Betty, 68 years old and supposedly harmless, whacked the phone out of her hand with her purse. That's assault, Miranda shrieked. Honey, I'm old and confused, Betty said sweetly. I thought it was a weapon. Chloe, meanwhile, was having a complete meltdown. You told me you were rich. She wailed at Caleb. You said you owned a company. You said we were going to Paris. I already told all my followers. Baby, I can explain. 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 I quit my job at the salon for you. I told everyone I was dating a millionaire. Do you know how embarrassing this is? My mother was right about you. She started hitting him with her designer bag, the one he'd bought with stolen money. The federal agents just let her go for a minute before pulling her back. As they dragged Caleb out, he made one last desperate attempt. She attacked me first at the doctor's office. I was defending myself. Morgan pulled out her phone and showed him the security footage from the gynecologist's office. You mean this video? The one where you hit a woman recovering from surgery? The one where 6 witnesses saw you assault her? That attack. Caleb's face went from purple to white. Victor, still stuck in the window, started crying. The employees had gathered outside Arthur's office, drawn by the commotion. When they saw Caleb in handcuffs, some started crying, but they were tears of relief. Martha from accounting actually applauded. "Is it true?" asked Ted, Arthur's foreman for 20 years. "Did he really kill Mr. Sterling?" I nodded. And Ted had to be physically restrained from going after Caleb. That man gave me a chance when no one else would. He paid for my daughter's cancer treatment. That's when I learned just how many lives my father had touched. Story after story came out. College tuitions paid, medical bills covered, second chances given, and Caleb had been planning to destroy it all for a quick $4 million. The trial was a circus. Caleb tried 3 different lawyers, each one quitting when they realized how much evidence we had against him. The financial crimes alone would have put him away for 20 years. But the murder charge, that was different. The prosecutor laid it out beautifully. Caleb had been stealing from the company for 5 years, but when Arthur started getting suspicious, he needed a permanent solution. Enter Miranda, who'd been down this road before. The defendant's stepmother, the prosecutor announced, has a very interesting history with husbands and heart conditions. He pulled up a chart. Husband number 1, Richard Miles, died of a heart attack after 2 years of marriage, left her $500,000. Husband number 2, Andrew Garrett, kidney failure, after 3 years left her $1.2 million. Husband number 3, Paul Kalinsky, stroke after 18 months, left her $2 million. And then we have victim number 4. Arthur Sterling, net worth approximately $2 million. And then we have victim number 4. Arthur Sterling Co. Net worth approximately $2 million. And then we have victim number 4. Arthur Sterling. Net worth approximately $12 million. Cause of death: digitalis poisoning, administered over 6 months. The courtroom gasped. Chloe, who'd been subpoenaed to testify, took the stand in an outfit more appropriate for a nightclub than a courtroom. Her testimony was unintentionally devastating. "Caleb told me his stepfather was dying anyway," she said, examining her nails. "He said they were just helping him along so he wouldn't suffer. He said it was merciful, but he also said we'd have 12 million. So I didn't ask questions. Was I supposed to ask questions? My last boyfriend said I asked too many questions." Caleb's face during her testimony was something to behold. Every time she opened her mouth, his lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. But the real bombshell came when they found Miranda's storage unit. She'd kept trophies, items from each dead husband, wedding rings, watches, and most disturbing medical records showing she'd researched their conditions extensively before marrying them. She targeted men with heart conditions specifically because the medications were easier to manipulate. My father's medical records were there too, annotated in her handwriting. Increase Tuesday dose, switch Thursday pills, final increase next week. She'd planned his death down to the day. Then Henry took the stand with Arthur's real will and the letter he'd left me. The judge actually had to call a recess when he read the part about Arthur knowing he was being poisoned, but wanting to gather enough evidence to protect me. "He died getting justice for his daughter," Henry said, his voice breaking. "He knew what they were doing, but he also knew if he acted too soon, they'd find another way to hurt Elena. So he endured it. He gathered evidence. He died a hero." The foreman from Arthur's company testified about the employee pension fund that Caleb had been draining. "Mr. Sterling promised us that money for our retirements. Some of us worked there for 30 years. Caleb Vance was stealing our futures." 3 other families came forward during the trial. They'd suspected Miranda in their loved ones' deaths, but never had proof. A pattern emerged. She'd find wealthy widowers with health conditions, marry them quickly, and they'd be dead within 3 years. Always natural causes, always leaving everything to her. "She's a black widow," one son testified. "She killed my father and I couldn't prove it, but now I know I was right." Caleb's gambling debts came out too. He owed almost $1 million to some very dangerous people. That's why he was so desperate to sell the company fast. The prosecution presented text messages from someone named Big Eddie, promising to break Caleb's kneecaps if he didn't pay up. So you see, the prosecutor concluded Caleb Vance didn't just steal from a company. He didn't just murder a good man. He betrayed a father who'd raised him, destroyed a family, and tried to rob honest employees of their futures. All for greed. The jury deliberated for exactly 43 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Caleb got 25 years for the federal charges plus life for the murder. When they read the verdict, he actually fainted, had to be carried out on a stretcher. Chloe, watching from the gallery, stood up and announced, "I'm totally writing a book about this. I dated a killer. Somebody call Netflix." Miranda got 30 to life for multiple murders. When they sentenced her, she didn't flinch. Just smiled that cold smile and said, "I'll appeal. She won't win." Victor, the fake notary, got 5 years for fraud and immediately offered to testify about every other crime Caleb had involved him in. Turns out Caleb had been running a whole side business and forged documents. Another 10 years got added to his sentence. But justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about restoration. The company was saved without Caleb's theft and with proper management. It was actually worth more than we thought, closer to 18 million. The employees got their pension fund restored with interest. Martha from accounting cried at her desk for an hour when she found out she could still retire next year. Arthur had left me a letter with Henry to be opened only after the trial. Inside was a key and an address I didn't recognize. "Your father set this up years ago." Henry explained. He knew Caleb was troubled, knew Miranda was dangerous. This was his insurance policy. The address led to another safety deposit box. This one at a bank across town. Inside was $2.5 million in bonds and a note for my grandchildren. I may not live to meet them, but I wanted them to know their grandfather loved them. Tell them about their grandmother too. Tell them they come from strong people. I cried for an hour in that bank vault. Detective Morgan got a commendation and used the publicity to create a task force focused on elder abuse and inheritance fraud. The Sterling case, as they called it, became required reading at the police academy. Betty got her moment of glory too. The forensic accounting community gave her an award for her work uncovering Caleb's embezzlement. She accepted it wearing a t-shirt that said, "Old ladies know everything," and got a standing ovation. Best part, Caleb's prison had a reputation. They didn't take kindly to men who hurt women or elderly people. Caleb had done both. His fellow inmates made sure he understood their displeasure daily. He wrote me a letter 6 months in begging for forgiveness, claiming Miranda had manipulated him, that he never meant for things to go so far. I sent it back unopened with a note. Return to sender. No such person at this address. 6 months after the trial, Sterling Architects was thriving. I'd learned Arthur's business from the ground up, and it turned out I had his instinct for it. We landed a contract to build the new children's hospital, something Arthur had dreamed about for years. The morning we broke ground, I stood where Arthur would have stood wearing his old hard hat. Ted the foreman squeezed my shoulder. He'd be so proud, Elena. I'd also found love in the most unexpected place. Dr. Lucas Reed had been my emergency physician the night of the miscarriage. He'd testified at the trial about my injuries, both from the surgery and from Caleb's attack. Afterward, he checked on me, made sure I was healing. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into something more. He was nothing like Caleb. Gentle where Caleb was violent, honest where Caleb was deceptive. When I told him I was scared to try for another baby after everything, he held me and said, "Whenever you're ready, or never, if that's what you need, I'm here for you, not for what you can give me." We married at the courthouse with Betty and Henry as witnesses. Simple, honest, real. The day I found out I was pregnant again, I drove to Arthur's grave. It was his birthday, and I'd brought his favorite beer and a piece of the lemon cake he loved. "We did it, Arthur," I told the headstone. "We got them. The company's safe. The employees are taken care of. And Caleb's never getting out. Miranda either." The wind rustled through the trees. And for just a moment I could swear I smelled his cologne. "I'm having a baby, Arthur. Lucas is a good man. You would have liked him. He actually reads contracts before signing them." I laughed through my tears. "And Betty's teaching me forensic accounting. She says I'm a natural. Must have gotten that from you too." I stood to leave, then turned back one more time. They thought I was weak. Arthur thought because I was grieving, because I was hurt, that I'd just roll over and let them win. I touched my still flat stomach where new life was growing, where hope lived. Despite everything that had tried to kill it, they were wrong. Maybe this story touched something inside you, a moment you lived, a feeling you once carried. We often think of strength as a loud roar, as a battle cry that shakes the earth. But sometimes strength is quiet. It is the simple act of standing up when your knees are trembling. It is the courage to wipe the blood from your lip, to look your oppressor in the eye, and to say, "No," even when your voice is shaking. Elena's journey wasn't just about fighting for an inheritance or a company. It was about reclaiming her dignity from those who mistook her kindness for weakness. It was about honoring a father who sacrificed his own life to gather the evidence needed to save his daughter. It reminds us that true family isn't always defined by blood, but by loyalty. While her stepbrother and stepmother, people who should have been family, were plotting her downfall, it was Betty the neighbor and the loyal employees who stood by her side. They remind us that we are never truly alone, even in our darkest hours. Greed is a powerful blinder. It made Caleb and Miranda believe they were invincible, that they could trample over lives without consequence. But they forgot one fundamental truth. The truth has a way of surfacing, often through the cracks we least expect. A hidden letter, a loyal friend, a forgotten camera. Justice may be slow, but it is persistent. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts or your own experience in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to someone close to you? Have you ever found strength you didn't know you had in a moment of crisis? Your stories matter, and they help build a community where we can all feel a little less alone. And please tell me where you're watching from so I can create more stories just for you. Whether you are watching from a bustling city or a quiet town, I want to know who you are. Your support is the heartbeat of this channel, and every comment and every subscription helps us bring more of these powerful stories to life. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Remember, no matter how heavy the storm, the sun always rises for those who refuse to quit. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.